righty. Hey, how about that? We're live on YouTube right now. We'll start the podcast here for everybody who's on YouTube. You can leave your comments, ask your questions. We're going to start with JT Koshy, who is on the top right of your screen. He is on mine anyway. I don't know if he's on y'all's. And ask your questions about maintenance, etc. We'll go from there. But other than that, let's. If there are no questions from the masses, we'll go ahead and start our podcast right here. And here we go. This is the Bite Me podcast. Welcome in. Welcome in. I am John Lopez. Captain Scott Knoll is chasing some 85-degree deer down in South Texas, so I guess he's not doing a lot of bagging them. He's more or less watching them sun by the pool. He will not be joining us. We do have the best reliever in podcasting. That would be Captain Dean Thomas from down in Aransas Pass. Captain Caleb McCumber joins us as well. I'm John Lopez. We have your questions. We have some topics. We want to make sure that you guys understand. The number one thing we want you to do is to subscribe to the podcast, and that's easy to do. We post it every Wednesday. If you subscribe, you can get that notification right on your inbox or on your phone or whatever it is. iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, wherever you get your podcast, you can subscribe. But we also are live on YouTube. It's a new twist for 2023 that we have. We have a lot of fancy things going on with the Bite Me podcast that are going to be really good for everybody. Enhance the podcast. You see that fancy scroll on the bottom with some of our partners. You can see the Bite Me logo up top right. We're going to get your comments. And we're going to start with maintenance because this started. JT Koshy from the Boatyard is joining us right now. And I thought it would be great, especially when we have some live viewers here. And if you have anything that you want to add to that, if you're just listening on the podcast after we post, we can get to them next week. And I'll get those questions to JT as well. And certainly Dean and Scott and Caleb have a lot of the answers as well. But we're going to start with maintenance. We're going to get into post-freeze report. Did we dodge a bullet? The biggest mistakes that the, quote, weekday challenged fishermen and fisherwomen post. And there was a lot of talk about pelicans on the Bite Me group page this week. A lot of lion pelicans. When are they reliable signs? When are they not reliable signs? We'll get to that with Captain Dean, Captain Scott, Captain Caleb, and we'll go from there. But let's start right here. JT, we are very, very happy that you are joining us from the Boatyard. And this is what was the impetus to it all. And then I want to get in with Caleb and Dean as we move on down here. But so I'm on the water. As I often am on the weekends, because I am one of those weekday challenge fishermen as well, but I go every week. And my PowerPole was acting a little squirrely, making a little noise. It came up, but it took about 3 or 4 tries for it to come up. I did the old YouTube thing. I got it up. That's what she said. And so anyway, that I got it up, and I just had to say it again, I guess. And so it was always fine, but then I did the YouTube thing, and it's
a good thing the warranty is so good on those things, right?
Hey, my warranty is long gone. That's for sure. It has expired long ago. So, all right. I asked JT. I texted JT. I said, so what do you think it is? Is it the fluid? And maybe it's something that is keeping it from happening again and being able to work. And so it turned into a topic, and that turned into having JT on. So if you have any maintenance, preventative maintenance questions for JT, he's going to be joining us for about 15 minutes here. But JT, the question is PowerPole common issues on the water. That can be a little scary. I'm not going to lie. I was like, whoa, because it wasn't coming up for a while. Then I got it going, and it was fine. But also with the trolling motors. So what are 2 of the most common things? And if people get stuck out there like I did, what do you recommend?
So there's, well, first of all, let me hear, how did you get it up? Do you use a rope and pull it up? Or did
no,
you get in the
I
water
actually, she did.
No,
we
got to mute our mics.
It was a big rope too. That's giant rope. No, I actually just kind of kept messing with it and with the buttons. Dude, this is going down a really bad hole here.
This is how we start.
So
This is the first podcast of the year.
And so, yes, welcome to 2023. I just kind of messed with the buttons a little bit, and ultimately it just came back. It was slow and a little noisy.
Gotcha.
So what do you
well,
think?
definitely there's a couple things. Number one is, well, like the way of having it not have that issue is check your stuff before you go out, obviously. But quick things to look at, just look in your compartment, wherever the pump is. When the pole is up, you should have about half or 3/4 of fluid in that reservoir. If you don't have that, there's chances there's some sort of leak somewhere, either outside on the pole, on the fittings, or inside by the pump. If it's inside, you'll see it. You're on the water. Let's say you put it down and that thing gets stuck. Two things. If it's all the way down, let's say you have an 8-foot pole, it's all the way extended. Those poles they will push out where they're overextended, where they're straight out, and those lines won't have any more fluid to bring it back up. So it sounds crazy, but this is in the PowerPole owner's manual. Put the boat in idle. This is if it's not hitting the ground, the pole is. Put the boat in idle and head towards the shore. That pole is much deeper than the bottom of your boat is. So that pole, when it starts touching the bottom, that should be enough to start lifting it up. It'll get it just out of that overextended position, hit up on the button, and it'll come up. Let's say you're just in some shallow water and it's stuck. So you can do the first option, put it in idle in gear, and it might be enough to just get it to pop up. If it's loss of fluid issue or something like that, where it's not just going to pop off, it's stuck in a position, it's really just stuck and can't come up with fluid. They're built in with something called a protector valve. So if you put enough force on the pole upwards, you can either pull it up with a rope, or if it's warm enough and you're in the water, you can just push it up by hand. It might be tough, like a lot of resistance at first, but eventually that valve will make it where you can just push the pole up and tie it up and get back to shore.
What about trolling motor? Doing the same thing?
Yeah, so trolling motor, a couple of different kinds. Some are manual, some are like automatic deploy. Minn Kota, especially, they make the Altera that's automatic deploy and stow. There's a couple of little pins on the front of there. And while you're at home, maybe before you go out, if you're not doing something, maybe after work, watch a couple YouTube videos. There's a couple of resets that you can do on those pins as the motor is deployed. So if you're out on the water and you're ready to bring back in and nothing happens, it's stuck out there. Number one, do those quick resets. If it still doesn't happen, unfortunately, sometimes the best thing you can do is just pull that quick release pin and bring the trolling motor in the boat. Do the resets first. Most of the time that fixes all issues.
You see Justin talking about the circuit board went out on his, and it acted funny like that at first as well. Dean, this is probably something that you and Caleb already knew, but since we have JT here, have you ever had similar issues and I guess anxious moments with whether it's your PowerPole or trolling motor or something else altogether?
I mean, I've broken everything at least 3 times or 4 times, but usually I've never had like it gets stuck or otherwise. I've broken the knuckle, from sticking it down and getting twisted in like some ugly wind. You pull down and you put so much torque on the pole in the water, it breaks the knuckle on top. It's that top joint. It twists. It's amazing, man. I look back there every day. I can't believe the thing is still hanging on there. It is the item that gets the most abused on the boat every day. And the troll motor, I mean, I say all the time, the troll motor runs more than the big motor does on most days. So it is the most used piece of equipment on my boat. But things that get used that much, they get abused, they're going to break. My troll motor, I mean, I run it into oysters daily. I jam it up, crashing into things all the time. But it is amazingly durable piece of equipment, man. The abuse that I give those things, and they still keep on working. But it's part of the game. It's, you know, it's not a gentle lifestyle out there.
Yeah,
I
no.
think the number.
And Caleb,
But so,
go ahead.
so when before the freeze, I was talking to my buddy over here, who works at the Portland Marine over here, and just asking him. I mean, I've had boats through freezes before, and I just asked him, I said, you know, is there anything particular I need to watch out for? And something that he told me that I never thought of was to keep the engine tilted completely down. Because if you're in the water and you tilt it up, it will trap water in some of those ports. And so if it stays tilted, there is water in there that will freeze. But if you tilt it all the way down, that water drains out. So as many years as I've been doing that, that was kind of news to me. I always keep my tilted up because I have a 4-stroke. And actually, oil will leak into the combustion chambers if you leave them tilted down. It's kind of weird. You crank it up, it'll put a puff of smoke out. So I tilt it up, and I didn't realize that it trapped water in there. So live and learn.
Go ahead, Caleb, because you know, having you on here with JT seems like a match made in heaven. Given that you know, you've been known to run a little skinny, maybe too skinny, break a couple things, props and such. What's been your best, most memorable moment, so to speak, with these types of issues?
Which one really?
How about the road? We'll start with the PowerPole.
I was going to say, does crashing out on Ulterra while the boat's still in the trailer, does that count?
Oh, that's right. Yikes.
Then there's I sent one to the bottom of Galveston because of a ship wake. But I'm reading a bunch of comments over. Everybody's talking about their yeah. Your trolling early morning, couldn't see very well. We were fishing a tournament and rolling out pretty hard, and man, a tanker had went like 10 or 15 miles past me, and the waves got to me at the dike right about the same time, and we had to. The quick release, that was on that little U-shaped pin. The thing, the pin kind of went straight across and then 45 degrees down for 2 or 3 inches, and then straight across again on both sides. We had to use heavy machinery to get that pin off of my boat.
What are you thinking here, JT?
The pin that holds the trolling motor onto the quick release, took waves and then bent. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. That's the second time I've done that. Yeah.
That's nuts. That's serious. I've actually never seen that. So that's.
You want to see it? I'll send you a picture. I got the pin. I have the pins on my shelf of honor somewhere.
Wow. Yeah. Take a picture of that. That's pretty wild.
I'll say the easiest, the thing that I've seen mostly with Ulterras, because you know everybody in the comments are talking about I could have bought 2 Ulterras for what I've spent. Mine's in the shop right now. Larry says his in the shop for a $400 repair, so he got up pretty cheap on that one. But Daniel and I own 3 of them to keep one running. It's just that, but it's a necessary evil, that trolling motor is. A Turova or something, you're never really gonna have problems with it. An Ulterra, there's a lot of moving parts. But if you have one, it's because you need it, right? You're on a tower, you're doing something where you really need it. But I get calls all the time because I've taken them apart and I've had to fix it myself multiple times on the water. And what I get a lot of time is the trolling motor is either deployed or it's stowed, and it's saying the remote, you know, is deployed and the remote saying it's stowed, or it's stowed and the remote saying it's deployed. And on the inside where the trolling motor head would be at is a little round magnet type deal. It slides up about 3/4 of an inch, slides back and forth, and that thing gets salt water and grass and sand and mud in it, and that thing will lock up on you. And what that is the sensor that tells the remote where the position of the trolling motor is. Typically, all you have to do is bend over the front of your boat and wiggle that thing back and forth a couple of times. You're back in business. That's probably the number one thing. It messes up on mine all the time. I try to, when I wash my boat, I try to get it with fresh water, and then I try to grease it every now and again. And that's really, that's the biggest trouble you see with the Ulterra, is just not knowing where it's at.
I'd agree 100%. That's like 99% of why people come in. Hey, that's just the remote and the trolling motor not talking to each other, and it's mostly because of that pin right up front.
Right.
Like I said, I mean, there's like a 3-minute YouTube video that shows you how to reset it, and you can just kind of like watch that, look at your trolling motor, and like know exactly what to do when it happens to you.
I want to get to some of the fishing topics here, but since we have JT with us, I'm going to just go through some of the comments that we're getting from our YouTube audience. JT, will Yamaha from Evan ever ship a 250 SHO show ever again? I guess there's been some issues with that. What do you say to that?
Man, it'll be a while. They're getting them out there. I see new, I guess it's Sea Pros or Sea Hunts coming out with the 250 shows. The bigger the OEM manufacturer, the more allocations they'll have on particular motors. The smaller, the less allocations. If you're just waiting on one, man, it's coming. They're kicking motors out faster and faster. Now I'm getting calls with, hey, we have this in stock, instead of getting calls of, let me call you and call Japan and see where they're at. So it's getting better. I don't know. A 250 show, that's a really desirable motor. I couldn't tell you an exact date. Depends on who you ordered it from. But the supply chain and everything with outboards is getting a lot better.
All right. A couple of other things here. Will Garmin ever make a saltwater version? What are your experience from the Bayou Burner regarding the Garmin?
Saltwater version. Is he talking about the trolling motor?
Yeah.
I'm thinking maybe yeah.
I'm thinking trolling motor. I think they're just testing it out. I know Lowrance is making one too, but the Garmin one, there's these bass guys, man. They got nothing against bass guys. They're spending a whole lot of money in front of their boat. They've been here at the shop. There's 3 12-inch GPSs next to a trolling motor. So the demand's there for sure for anyone making a trolling motor to be in the saltwater market. I'm sure they will, but I don't have any sort of like intel or anything like that.
Yeah, PowerPole's coming out with the trolling motor too. I was talking to them last fall.
Mm-hmm.
They're coming out with the trolling motor and a GPS, or not? Yeah, GPS, and they both look pretty cool. They're not going to be cheap, but they sound pretty cool.
What are some of the new things that people can keep their eye on since we have you? And then I got one more question for you, and we'll get back into the fishing aspect of this podcast. Anything cool other than what you guys have mentioned right now?
That's kind of the cool stuff coming out. I think they're making those chips, like 3D imaging and stuff for GPS, just better and better and better. Every year they get better. That's like, you could have an older GPS, 2-3 years old, and put a new chip in it and see something new and like interesting.
All right. So before we let you go, we're very familiar with the podcast, obviously. Koshy from the Boatyard joining us. We often talk about boat ramp confessionals, something silly and dumb that has happened at the ramp. And I'm like, JT's coming on. I bet you he's got some stories, whether it's something that, because you're out on the water all the time, either testing boats or whatever. Or maybe someone who came in to get some work done that said, well, this is what really happened. When we say boat ramp confessional, we're all dumb. We all swallow our pride, and we're going to just tell you what we do on the water that's dumb. What are some of the ones that jump to mind for you?
A couple. I've seen a lower unit like sheared in half, pretty much. When you leave it down, trimmed down all the way, jack plate all the way down, the guy must have just pulled out of the ramp, had the windows up and the music going full blast, because basically the metal straight line straight across it. I've got some that one was pretty good to see. Some funny ones that a ton of people. The guy dips the boat in the water, his kids are sitting in the boat and the boat's floating away as he's going to park the truck. Then you see him running back and swims in the water. We've talked about it before, sort of like the best like first time boat is like a simple John boat with a motor. Most cases you don't even need a trailer. We've all been there the first time launching a boat. Like, kind of a funny story is me and my dad, our first boat was I guess it was like early 2000s. He bought a John boat. I think it was like $50 or something like that. We have no idea about any sort of boat, never been on the water. And I think we put the motor on, and before we could even get it started, of course, didn't have a plug in it. The boat sank, and I think we were just sitting there in about 2 feet of water trying to figure out where, should we swim or should we just stand up and walk back to the truck? That was pretty good. But I mean, you name it.
And so people know, just so people know, your dad has driven ships, what years? Captain ships.
Oh yeah, I mean he was just offshore on ships, doing load on, load offs, working on a
Yeah.
ship for a very long time. Yeah, since he was a kid.
So he's no novice. Yeah, he's
No,
no
I mean as
novice
far
over
as
it.
seamen,
All right.
yeah, 100%.
Those big ships don't have a plug though. You don't have to.
That's
You don't have to worry
right.
about the plug.
Yeah, you put hundreds of thousands of gallons in, they'll just pump it out. And a John boat, you're sinking. You're done.
You're done. All right, JT, we're going to let you go, man. Appreciate you joining us. And if anybody has any other questions, just get them to me this week, and I'll get them to JT. I'll get them real soon. And that's the Boatyard in Kemah. You can get all your stuff done right there. Just give us an update real quick. What is going on? People are always looking for motors, always looking for boats. What's the latest? What do you guys got?
Tahatsu's back in stock like crazy. I can get almost any size. I've got John boats coming in finally, 14 foot, 12 foot, 10 foot, all welded John boats. I've got Magic Tilt trailers are more readily available if you need a new trailer. New Stingray boats and Sunchaser pontoons in stock right now. So we're just moving, ready.
And
for
by the way,
springtime.
Caleb, JT's the one that sold the boat I got from the kids at the
schoolyard
there.
Yeah.
I hope you gave the money to the kids.
Yeah.
Ask John. That's all John. I just gave the money. It's on him.
The guy knew too that was the one that they sold me, or they donated to me, I should say.
How do you sell something got donated to you, man?
Well, okay, so here's the story.
There's more to the story every time I hear.
Every time we've told this story for 6 weeks, and you're always like, "Well, here's the part you don't understand."
No.
We get it. We know what happened.
Here's the story. A little 14-foot John boat. My wife is a school director in Kingwood at Good Shepherd. And they had this John boat donated to the school for the playground. So the little kids would get on that John boat, and he had a little steering wheel they added to it. And they thought they were Christopher Columbus, man. They were sailing the world in that John boat. They're all 4, 5, 6 years old. And they were having a blast for about 10 years. That John boat was on the playground. Then they redid the playground with new, equipment and such. And so y'all are just laughing. So my wife said, "We're going to get rid of this John boat. Do you want it for something?" I said, "Sure. I can take it into some of those little, ponds and stuff by where I am down in Sargent." So I fixed it up, cleaned it up, took all the sand out, and got a brand new motor from the boatyard, brand new trailer from the boatyard, and I used it for a little bit. And so I got the title from the guy that donated to him, and so boom, there we go. We're all good. And then I realized I really don't use it that much, so I'm gonna just let somebody else have it. So it's very, very straightforward, very legitimate.
Did you let somebody else have it, or did you sell it to them?
I gave it to JT, and he sold it to someone.
JT, did John get any money? You said who'd you send the money to, JT?
I sent it to a fund. And John
JT, did you keep a commission?
No, the John P. Lopez Fund.
Yeah,
I feel like this is a congressional hearing at this point.
So in essence, it's kind of like not only did I get the boat from the kids, but I actually copped a little bit of something in the long run.
The poor children always pay the price.
They always pay the price.
The little pictures on Facebook on the Bite Me page about that boat were hilarious.
Their faces are crying.
Yeah.
Like, I want my boat back. All right, JT, we're gonna let you go. We got some fishing stuff to do here, so we're letting you go. Thanks again for joining us, man.
Perfect. Guys,
all right, boys. Let's get to some topics here, and I'm gonna start with this one in just a second. All right, back with Captain Caleb McCumber, Captain Dean Thomas. Dean, I think I'm going to start with you on this because one of the things that we talked about coming into this podcast is obviously this is the first podcast of 2023. And I talked to Caleb and Scott, and the question came up, what did we learn in 2022 about the fishery, about fishing, about prospects, etc.? And while you're kind of mulling that, I know you're on the water so much. We're coming out of the freeze. Clearly, We've had some, some back and forth with the changes in regulations and laws. And I know I'm kind of sideswiping on you on this, but I kind of want to do that because like, what's your gut reaction if somebody just came up to you as I just did and said, Dean, what did 2022 tell us about the fishery? You're down on the lower coast in Aransas Pass. What did it tell us?
Man, let's see. Yeah, there's been a lot of changes, a lot of stuff going on. What 2022 has taught me is that there's more people on the water. There's more guides than ever. For whatever reason, we have this. There's more pressure on the resource, which is number one. I mean, the amount of people that are, cleaning fish at the end of the day, what I've learned is we need to kind of promote some form of catch and release ethic on saltwater. The pressure on the resource is immense. And all the, so this is 22 years I've been guiding. This will actually be my 22nd year that I'm starting. And it's funny. So 20 years ago when I started guiding, I talked to these dudes that had been fishing the previous 20 years that told me, oh, the good old days, man, how it used to be. Well, I look at now of what 20 years used to be like in an amazingly short time. 20 years is really not that long.
Yeah.
In the grand scheme of things, it is the pressure on the resources changed dramatically. The amount of guides on the water, it's just crazy. The fish that are coming in every day. So, I've learned that there's a lot of pressure on the resource. The limits and things that are that have changed, I'm 100% in support of, and if something, you're never going to stop people from going fishing. So the only thing you can change is the fish that are kept. So, that's going to be the challenge of the future. But the limits that are in place, I'm cool with that. I still see, people come in, they post their pictures every day. And if you get a limit of reds, trout, and there's a whole lot of black drum, people have shifted gears towards black drum because they're available. They're good to eat. That is a giant pile of fish for one day. So, the pressure on the resource is immense.
Is it resonating though? Before we get to Caleb's take of what 2022 told us, is it resonating to more and more fishermen about not necessarily,
No.
stacking them up on the cleaning tables?
Not even. No.
So people are still just wanting to catch that picture.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, you click on Facebook, scroll down the fishing guides every day. I mean, I have personally taken a mission upon myself to glamorize the release shots and but I'm only one person. I'm not going to change a culture. I don't kid myself and think I'm going to change a culture.
You never know, Dean. I'm serious.
But,
I'm not just blowing smoke.
And we've had this conversation before. When we get a couple of fish, when I have people that are keeping fish, if we have a great day and it's just going killer, man, halfway in the middle, I'm like, hey, I explain pressure on the resource. And I say, hey, man, would y'all feel like about letting some go? They always support that. The customers, the people on the boat, they're like, what am I going to do with all these fish anyway? So I think it's fishing for that picture.
Yeah.
But it's just the way it is. I can personally do what I do and I can have my way of feeling about things. I don't see me changing the world, but the world is going to change itself due to pressure on the resource.
All right, Caleb.
Yeah.
Go ahead. You've got another thought there, Dean.
I was just going to say Florida is ahead of us in the evolution of fishing. Other places have fished their fishery, or they have decimated their fishery to the point where they had to change. And that's just where Texas is headed.
Caleb, what did 2022 tell you about Middle Coast up here, East Matagorda, et cetera?
Man, I'm so glad you asked Dean first. 'Cause he says so much I don't have to say now. Really,
So you're not the bad guy.
I mean, paraphrase, I learned in 2022 that the majority of people don't give a rat's ass about freezes or trying to make things better or anything. Um, it's rough, but like Dean, I don't necessarily agree with Dean that there isn't much of a shift, but I'm lucky in that my customer base are those people. And several of them, they come get on the boat, and they could be lying to me just for the day, but I don't get the feeling where,
Yeah.
they say, we used to like to keep a bunch of fish, but then we asked ourselves why one day, and that's just where we're at, right? But I learned that the fish are a little more resilient than we thought they would be. Whenever that hurricane came through, I guess last spring or something, it helped our fishery. What I found really interesting though is a lot of the guides that did nothing but fish for trout.
That's where I was going to go. That's exactly. Go ahead.
So after the freeze, whenever I was, promoting the conservation and working with biologists and parks and wildlife, and everybody was telling me that I'm full of crap, that the fishing's great, book a trip tomorrow. They weren't fishing for trout. They went in the back lakes and tried to catch redfish. And then this fall, the trout fishing was fine in the bay, and they were all still in the back lake just pounding the redfish. And it got to the point where I went 3 months and saw 3 schools of redfish, which Dean will tell you is absolutely unheard of in the fall. But what Dean and I, we all know a common saying, and it's the season when guides are made, right? And that's the fall.
Yeah.
That's when redfish are schooling. That's when birds are working. And that's when people go out and take all their friends, catch a bunch of fish, and go, you know what? I can be a guide. It's that easy and that simple in the fall. It wasn't like that this year. The fish I had in the back lakes were so spooky you couldn't get around them. The numbers are way down. I'm moving, dude. I've mentioned this before. I'm moving to a completely different base system. Next time I run trips, it will not be in Matagorda, Texas. It's that simple. See you. Peace out. And
that is because
they're just too. I don't want to. I'm like Dean. I don't feel like I can change the world, but when the fishing finally crashes, I'm gonna know that I wasn't part of the problem. I'm not gonna lose any sleep over it. It's that simple.
And so here's an interesting observation that I've had. 20 years ago, the Lighthouse Lakes trails and BNR flats and the flats here adjacent to our pass, there were days when there were, and I have photographs from back in the day that were amazing, that were redfish schools from shoreline to shoreline with their tails up. Every day when we went out, our goal was to find tailing fish. I mean, we would look for tails. I mean, that you didn't even start fishing until you found the schools and you found those tails. Those schools do not exist anymore. And I'm sure I had this discussion with a dude the other day, and it was one of those Facebook things where I was like, expressed my discontent, and I got a complete argument about, oh, there's redfish in every hole. And I was like, it's not what it was. The pressure, those fish do not exist. I think I'm fortunate to have experienced that, to seen it, to be able to compare it, because otherwise, what else do you have to base it on except for the experiences that were there in the past and what you're trying to duplicate now? And that it just doesn't exist anymore. Those fish that lived in undisturbed, basically, except for occasionally, where they would get broke up and stuff, those areas that used to see 1 or 2 boats a day or 3 or 4 have 12 or 15 boats. And, they don't get the reprieve of Monday through Wednesday anymore. It's 7 days a week. And it's just really changed. And I understand what those guys meant 20 years ago when they were explaining to me what it was like the previous 20 years ago.
Yeah.
So,
and
they're not there.
Yeah, they're not. We are in the business of helping people catch more fish. And so I don't want to be too Debbie Downer here, but the reality of what you two guys just said, I think could be turned into a positive if we got thousands of people that listen to the podcast. If they realize that that's going to be the most expensive fish you ever eat in your life, if you when you keep fish and you clean them and you fry them up or
Oh, man.
whatever.
If you ever divide the pound of fish
Yeah.
per what you spent, and I tell people all the
You
time, I
should
say,
buy
you
halibut.
don't ever want, you
It-
don't want to do that math. You just
Nobody's
be a
listening.
bargain.
Nobody's listening to this podcast because they want help feeding their family. They're listening to the podcast because they fish and it's fun and it'd be fun to catch more fish. Let's just make
Right.
fishing for fun. Fish for Red Hat. Make fishing fun again.
Yeah.
and I don't, I don't want to sound too negative about the whole
Right.
thing.
That's
It's
what I'm
just
saying.
comparing
We're here
what it
to
was
catch more fish.
to what it
Yes.
is. And so another, it was Everett Johnson actually who made the, this was a long time ago when he was talking about the speckled trout fishery of the previous 20 years. He said that we're just whittling away at what's left. And it really does make sense. You still catch fish. You still can go out there and have a great day, but you're working on smaller areas, focusing on smaller stuff. It's not, it's just not the same as it was, but there are fish there. I mean, the last 2 weeks have been amazing. And yeah, we're going to get into that in a minute too, about the post-freeze fishing.
Yeah, well, unless you have something else to add here, Caleb, let's get
No.
into it right now. Because a couple things. Let's start with post freeze. We had a good one, man. And shout out to Captain Nick Mosley, who's joining us and is texting the podcast here. He knows about this. I saw Captain Nick at the dock. I was texting with him after the big freeze in 2021, and it was incredibly depressing. And he was doing God's work out there. Letting people know what was going on and doing his thing. This freeze was a lot more rapid moving, clearly just as cold, or nearly as cold. Hung around for a day and a half, and Captain Scott kept saying, "Dean, I'll start with you. Let's not be too hasty here about it wasn't that bad. It wasn't that bad because the temperatures hadn't come all the way up yet. Once they come up, then some of the fish that died might float to the top." I still didn't see a lot of that. So what would you say about did we dodge a bullet or not on this latest freeze?
I mean, I don't think the bullet was that dangerous. It just wasn't, because
Okay.
we didn't have any dead fish. In the sailboat channel over here that kind of bisects BNR Flats was the only place I saw dead fish. There were hardheads and mullet washed up on one little shoreline, one windy shoreline. In the marina where my boat is, during the freeze of 21, those fish come and seek shelter in those harbors, and it was wall to wall mullet from side to side. And then those mullet died in that freeze. This time we had the same mullet that moved in there, but none of them were struggling.
Right.
They weren't stressing, and I saw no dead fish. And since then, it has been amazing fishing in the last 2 weeks after all the other things I said. So in all the places that I've gone to expect to catch redfish in the past 2 weeks has been all speckled trout. Amazing speckled trout.
Really?
Yes.
Yeah, I saw some pictures. I guess was it you or Carrie had a nice speckled trout.
My buddy Dano Wise was here in town. He lives in South Padre. He's been hanging out here. Amazing photographer, great fisherman. Love sharing stories with him and comparing notes from his area. And we just had an amazing 2 weeks. Crazy photos, great fish. Was an interesting pattern though, because we would have them early morning and we go through long spells in the middle of the day with just zero activity. And then late in the evening, as the sun was fading, it just like kicked into another gear. So it was interesting. It was fun.
Caleb, what about Middle Coast? What you see, what you hear, dodging a bullet? It sounds like it wasn't that bad, at least from what I saw.
Yeah, no, I our predictions aren't always right, but I think this one was correct. I think it helped. I think it cooled off the water. I think it dumped some bait out, got things going. But this is just like that freeze I don't remember when Pat and I were fishing the Legends, but that's the year it happened, and it was the same thing. It was in the 20s for a couple of days, and then right after it, the fishing was absolutely outstanding. I think this one was not a bad one at all.
The coldest water temperature I registered here was like 51, 52.
I definitely got
Okay.
colder than that here. I saw upper 30s on a couple of gauges, lower 40s on a couple, but the sun was coming out real good every day and
Yeah.
keeping.
So, well, we had ice like from the wind chill where water was splashing, like up on duck blinds and stuff. For one day, there was some icicles on duck blinds, but basically the water temperature never really dropped to that dramatic point. So, yeah, dodged a bullet, missed a bullet, whatever you want to call it. It wasn't that bad.
Speaking of which, not bullets, but arrows. I want to let you brag about that that buck you got there, Dean. That was something else. You and Scott and I were talking about it off air. I think last time you joined us, but on air, you got you one, man, and that was that had to be a thrill of a lifetime.
Man, I love to tell the story. It's amazing. For, I've shot does, I've shot spikes, I've shot pigs, but when that big buck comes into range, and this is, it's years of effort I put into this when it comes to practicing and standing out here in the yard and shooting arrows
and the science of the arrows and how you're tuning them and everything.
Oh, there is, it's an art form to it. I mean, it is a science, and 2 or 3 yards makes a huge difference on the arrow. So knowing your range, knowing all those things, and being comfortable and be able to control yourself. So here's what happens when that deer comes walking in there and your heart starts pumping. I mean, you can feel your heart in your chest. It's like, and the adrenaline messes with my vision. So when it comes time to draw, and you're looking at these little tiny peep sight in this thing, and I mean, it's like it just goes to a blur for a minute. But this mega buck, and so the ranch that I hunt on, it's very restricted in what we shoot. We shoot cold deer like crazy. We shoot the does, the spikes. It's a free for all for those. There's royalty. There's big bucks that live out there that aren't allowed to be shot. So this one deer that I shot turned out to be a 12-point cull, much older, and I videoed it. I took it in, showed Grandpa. Grandpa gave me the green light. He's like, shoot that deer. And then immediately I'm like, well, I'm never going to see that deer again.
You're never going to see it again as soon as he says yes.
The next morning, within 30 minutes, that buck came walking out within bow range. I drew my bow, and this amazing calmness almost came over me for a minute, to where I looked at my sights and then I looked away. I was at draw. And then I realized that deer had no sense, no clue that I was there. And the third time I came back to my sights, I just nailed him a beautiful shot.
Yeah, it was gorgeous.
It's an amazing experience. And that deer was at like 12 yards from me. So it's so up close and personal. It's just an amazing experience to trick a buck like that, because those bucks don't make mistakes. And if you let that deer know one time that something funny is going on, you will never see that deer again. If he senses anything out of the ordinary, that deer will never come back to that trail ever again in its life.
Yeah.
And I was fortunate enough to put it all together, and it was amazing.
I just got the old text message from Scott Null, who was listening, because he doesn't have a good signal, but he's listening on YouTube Live from the deer blind. He says, Dean and calm do not belong together. But we will move on back.
Exercise in self-control
and futility. All right, here we go. Let's get back to fishing now, back on the water. Caleb, I'm going to start with you on this, because this happened to me this weekend. I am one of those weekday challenge people that is always out on the water, and I was out Friday late, and then Saturday pretty much all day, and I meant to go back out there on Sunday. I never did. But pelicans everywhere. This is a topic that we've covered, but I think it's worth revisiting, because the question is, when are pelicans reliable signs, and when are they not? Scott has some good points on this, but I want to get your thoughts and Dean's. I'm going to start with you, Caleb, because I actually had a little bit of success, nothing spectacular, but caught some trout. under some pelicans, but the key thing for me was I wasn't even stopping because I tried a couple times early on Friday, unless there were some seagulls mixed in with those pelicans sitting on the water. To me, that was the trick this weekend. When are pelicans reliable signs and when are they not?
You know, I'm 41, and I got lucky in that my curve of fishing was accelerated greatly by people that took me under their wing for heck still now. I mean, I still call and ask God a question every once in a while, unless it's about the barometer. And the point I'm trying to make is you never ever quit learning, right? And maybe I'll learn something different, but at this point in my career, I have never considered a pelican anything more than maybe a suggestion. And just that's just how I feel about them. I've seen hundreds of them dive in the water. I've seen them swimming in the circles like Scott talks. I've done all that, and sometimes I fish them, sometimes I don't, and very rarely am I rewarded for what I was doing there. Right, the greater northern, the white ones, when they're all up on a flat, you can tell they're working together. Maybe I'll go look at that, but I think I told this story not too long ago, but I've caught more fish under ducks recently than I have under pelicans.
My God.
And the pelicans have just never been my thing. Maybe Dean will say something different. If Scott says something different, I really don't care because anybody thinks the barometer doesn't matter. I just don't trust what they have to say about it. But, maybe Dean will tell me something smart here. But long story short, if I'm desperate and I can't find anything else, I might watch some pelicans. But I've never gotten excited about brown, white, any of them.
They're such a tease, Dean, because you do see them going and getting bait, and you're like, "Well, come on!" And you fool yourself into believing them. And over the course of time, I don't fall for it nearly as much. But my thing is, and maybe this has just happened to me in recent years. If I see a couple, not just one, but if I see a couple of seagulls mixed in with the pelicans sitting on the water, I'm generally going to give it a try. And I've caught. Not this past time. I caught like 2 little trout, but I've caught some decent fish underneath the mix of pelicans and seagulls. What are your thoughts?
Well, I agree with Caleb on this one. I mean, I see a lot of pelicans. I see them working together, getting up, setting down, and then they circle up and they think
fluttering back and forth. Yeah.
The thing about pelicans and fish is that pelicans eat fish, and fish, that is their mortal enemy. Fish don't hang around under pelicans. I've never actually sat down and had the conversation with the pelican, but I have seen a lot of pelicans. I have seen pelicans attack a school of redfish and herd them up to the shoreline and just decimate them. And just a full-grown pelican will pick up a slot-sized red and just inhale them, just wolf them down. So I don't think fish will hang around under pelicans. I think if a fish sees the pelicans or knows they're in the vicinity, they're going to flee that vicinity. But I mean, pelicans on a flat are a good sign that there's bait fish there and there are fish somewhere. But going to the pelicans and fishing around them, that's never really paid off for me. I mean, and I don't use them very often either. I like to see them out there feeding. That just tells me there's mullet in the area. There's some type of fish, but I don't just go to them and try to fish them like a seagull.
The biggest enemy of a sight casting guy up on a tower is your shadow hitting that fish. And why a 30-inch redfish would run from a shadow, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense until you think about that. Since this fish has been little bitty, that a bird or something coming over throws that shadow, and it's a natural reaction.
And it's different.
Above me, let's get out of here.
He thinks you're a pelican.
Now, Chris Colin, however it is I'm supposed to say his name.
You said it wrong last time too.
What's right, John?
Chris Colin.
Colin? All right, Colin.
Pretty sure.
He made the point that offshore, and because
that's your deeper water for sure.
Well, and those pelicans are eating trout-sized fish that the fish you're looking for offshore are also eating. So if there's a bait ball and pelicans are pounding that, is a different story, I would say. Any kind of bird I see pounding the water offshore, I'm gonna go see what's happening.
Jetties as well. What's the jetty reaction where you are, Dean, for pelicans and other type birds?
Pelicans chase bait balls offshore, and what's underneath the bait ball is what we're fishing for. So Pelicans are a great sign offshore.
Mm-hmm.
And they work in teams. I mean, you can watch them. If one dives, it's amazing what they can see from a distance. And one pelican hits the water, there's 30 more headed that direction. So in that situation, very much interested in pelicans, but on the flats, not so much.
By the way, Caleb said this earlier, and I knew he was talking about moving his operation, so to speak. Caleb, are you gonna follow me down to Aransas Pass? It's gonna be you, me, and Dean down there.
I'm not going that far. Dean and I, there's actually a court order that we can't be within 300 yards of each other for more than 30 minutes. I've been down there several times.
Restraining order?
Yeah.
Who has the restraining order? Which one of you?
I can't. I don't know what's the name of that. What's the name of that marina and grill I like to hang out at over there, Dean? Wyatt's.
The one right there by your place.
Yeah,
Mickey's. You mean
Mickey's?
Yeah,
Mickey's. Yeah. Every time I'm over at Mickey's, I'm only allowed to call Dean one out of 3 of them. I'll be somewhere in the wilderness between Port O'Connor and Rockport, and I don't say that facetiously. Facetiously. I'm not joking. I'm not joking.
Facetiously.
Because there's multiple ramps I can use to do different things I want to do around there.
And you're going to be skinny water in the back lakes.
It fits that pole and skiff real good for what I do. My tournament partner before Daniel took a job down in Seadrift. He's moving down there, so I'll have a place to stay. My boat and his boat will both live there in Seadrift. There's a lot of things that make sense about it.
Man, my wife's dad, I used to go fishing. He had a place down in Seadrift way back in the day, 70s and 80s. So things come full circle. I actually know Seadrift a little bit here and there.
I don't know anybody in Seadrift.
Well, you do now, Captain Caleb.
Howdy. I'm not going to be launching out of Seadrift often, but he's going to
open a bar.
No, man, no, that's cool though. You be close. We meet in the middle.
Yeah. Well, so Compton, I think Compton's moving down there too. So we'll just all go see Scott every evening. So I know he's going to like the company.
I think
he's got 2 houses. He's got plenty of room for us.
We had to talk about that. Turns out, Dean, there's not room for either one of us. We had this talk yesterday.
I'm gonna get him bunk beds as a housewarming, so we can all just stay there.
That's it. I'm just gonna go park my RV and put a generator behind the barn.
That's it. I'm gonna put a van out there in the pasture.
Yeah, and you might as well take the tires off of it so they don't rot. It'll be there so long.
Oh Lord, he's still listening. He's still listening. He's texting as he couldn't be on the podcast, but he's listening like crazy in the deer blind.
Sounds to me like somebody me playing hooky.
Hey, we could get one of those nice vans with a window unit in, Dean.
Oh yeah, do one of that. It's kind of limping off the window a little bit. One of those things.
Maybe he'll
just go like door to door to door and build us a little commune.
Maybe we can get him to put a feeder out there by it so we can take one of the windows off the vans and do some little hunting while we're out there.
Yeah,
that's legal.
Yeah.
Well, I think we're about 90% sure, 99% sure. We're going to be getting that place here in the next couple of months down in Aransas Pass. So I'll be a big pain in the butt to Dean at some point. I'm going to be running. We're going to be neighbors, man. I'm going to be running all kinds of lower unit problems. But
I'm over there and borrow a boat when I need one.
Yeah, you can have it anytime you want. All right, boys. One more thing before we get to what would Caleb do and what would Dean do in this case. And that one thing is something that Caleb, I'm going to start with you. Good question. I think it was you that coined or maybe it was Dean, the weekday challenge term. People that go out there Friday, Saturday, Sunday, or just Saturday or whatever. That clearly is limiting your, I guess, experience on the water for that week. Your knowledge when you turn the key on your motor on your boat. So what are some of the other big mistakes, or what are some of the big mistakes that you see weekday challenge people doing? They want to get out there. They tend to be a little bit more, maybe desperate's not the right word, but eager to catch some fish because they're just not out there very much. I'm kind of a tweener. I mean, I'm technically a weekend guy, but I go every weekend for about 2 or 3 days. So I'm kind of a tweener. But the guys who are out there maybe once a month, once every 6 weeks, twice every 2 months, or whatever it may be. What are some weekday challenged things that fishermen do?
Man, we done spent an hour, and all we've done is bitch about other boaters, talk about how pelicans suck, and now we're going to attack the weekday challenge.
No, we're helping them.
Is this really how?
And
No.
this is equal opportunity offender podcast.
No. Let me explain. This question is like, what do I need to check myself with?
Man,
I answered it by saying, don't be so impatient. Trust the process of what you read in the tides and charts and barometer, because I'm a barometer guy as well, and just trust yourself a little more. A lot of people get impatient. So that's the gist of it. Is, am I doing it right? What should I do different?
All right. I think the low hanging fruit here is just showing up and running to whatever spot. That whether we're going to A, B, or C, we caught fish here 3 or 4 months ago, and we were here last whatever, and putting on blinders to everything until you get there. That's probably and I almost did it the other day. I went to I took 3 little kids with me, and I went to 2 different spots. I was like, oh man, this is a good spot. They're going to catch fish. And we caught fish, but it wasn't what I wanted it to be. Right. And so there's a popular drifting area there in Matagorda that I'd been doing good on for 2.5 months. I said, I'm going to take these kids over there. And I'm just flying through there, heading to that spot. And I just happened to look around, and to my west, 200 yards was probably 400 birds just sitting on the water.
Pelicans.
Small white pointy nosed pelicans. And it's an area that I never fish. I really don't. I never fish it. I've tried fishing there and hadn't done much good there. But I took my blinders off, saw something, went over there and drifted through it, and 3 10-year-olds caught as many 20-inch trout and redfish as they could stand, just because I slowed down, got off the agenda that I had in my head on the drive down and the way out of the harbor, and just took in what was around me. And that, what I saw wasn't something that, some top secret fishing guide knew how to see. It was 200 freaking birds sitting on the water, but 10 boats drove past me as fast as they could to go to that spot, to go to spots while we're, and thank you for doing that. That was very nice of you to not sit there and drift through it with me.
Yeah.
But had you done it, it would have been pretty good. And I had a lot of people tell me, yeah, that, whatever day that was pretty tough for us. And so, opened my eyes to the nature around me. It helped. When I left the harbor, I had no idea there'd be fish there. It wasn't something I learned on Bite Me or YouTube. It's just looking around while I'm on my way.
So Dean, he's saying be flexible.
Yeah, I mean,
what would you say?
People make the same mistakes that they make on weekends. It's not a day of the week thing. My philosophy is always keep it simple. Unless I want to go explore and see something different. So, I think that sometimes people want to go, they hear stories about some location that they've never fished, like over here, it's easy to launch out of one of our marinas and fish Ransom and Dagger and South Bay and the stuff that's up close. But, you hear stories of, the shoreline of St. Joe, Spalding, down the shoreline, Mud Island, and those. And, it's hard to go someplace that you haven't fished regularly and figure it out. So if you are going to do something different, have the mindset that you're going there to learn what it's about. You can't really count on going there and just, because somebody did it before you, and you're going to a spot that you heard about and being that productive there. You got to use that as a learning experience. What I used to tell people, and I still do, and I get phone calls where people call me up, hey, I want to learn how to fish, jump on my boat, or I'll go on your boat, but I just want to learn about the area. Pick a spot and go there repeatedly. And so it's kind of weird because when we're coming up to the next subject, it seems like I've been here on the full moon. Every podcast I get on, we've been the week before the full moon. So it's like talking about the moon cycle and what's fixing to happen. But go to a spot, fish it on a new moon, fish it on the first quarter, fish it on the full moon, hit it on the high tide, hit it on the low tide, and stick with that spot until you learn everything you want to know about it. Then branch out to something else and treat it the same way. Get an understanding so that when you leave the boat ramp, you can look at where the water is on the poles and you can go, hey, that's where I want to be today. And then you have a plan A and a plan B that falls into that scenario for that day. It just narrows down your search.
One thing
Eliminates few
that I always try to tell people and remind myself occasionally is, in your mind's eye, when you get up in the morning or whenever and you get out on the water, you always have a plan. You've looked at the weather the last couple of days. You know what the wind's supposed to be doing. And Caleb, this happened to me very, very recently. And it happens all the time. I mean, it's a regular occurrence. The wind was supposed to be doing this. The waves were supposed to be doing this. The temperature was supposed to be doing this. And all three are different than what were expected. So it kind of ties in with yours of being flexible. Get out on the water and kind of reassess is one thing. Okay, so if this is the case now, where should I be? Because I was planning on being here, but kind of reassess once you get out on the water. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, and it's going to make you a better fisherman when you're going to somewhere that produces sometimes and sometimes it doesn't. You're good chance is you're just going and casting in that spot where, and you're going to see stuff and, like freaking pelicans. You're going to see that and be like, oh, I'm going to go fish that. You're going to learn that sucks. You're going to see birds sitting on the water. You're going to learn, hey, that's not that bad. You're going to see, a couple of ribbon fish come out of the water. Oh, that's cool. Stuff like that. Or even I've learned how to see open bay redfish because they the ones that I'm fishing or have been fishing, they come up for about 5 seconds, they go back down. But I'm gotten where I can see them within 50 yards of me. But it started out with I went there on sitting birds. The birds flew off, but I'd caught a fish or two, so I kind of hung out. And then I learned, well, the birds are sitting here because sometimes these fish push bait up to them, but the fish aren't staying up long enough and pushing the bait up long enough for the birds to be flying around, over the top of them. The birds will sit in the water. They'll get up and they'll circle around for a little bit and sit back down. And they're just looking for that fish just like I am. Hey, if there's anything I learned in 2022 is that fishermen and birds have a hell of a lot in common.
Yeah, they do.
I mean, for real, the birds are swimming around going, where the heck are these fish at? Just like we are.
I say that all the time. I mean, I got somebody on the boat and you see the birds and you're like, well, they're looking too. They're looking. They're absolutely looking. And sometimes they do a better job of it than we do. All right. What would Caleb do and what would Dean do? It is time to go fishing this week. Let's look at Thursday, Friday, Saturday. I was looking at my apps that I rely on earlier. Caleb, I'm going to start with you. Doesn't look too bad. A little bit windy. I think it looks like Saturday morning, but nothing that's going to be outrageous coming out of the south. We've got some temperatures that are going to be a little bit, sort of balmy, like they've been lately. I think high is 68 on Saturday. Friday is a 66 or something like that. So very good sunny on Friday. I would say, and this is just my amateur opinion, I'm going to leave it to the professionals to expand on it. Friday looks pretty good to me.
It looks like a good time to go wade some flats, wade some drains. If you want to drift, I think drifting will be just fine. It's the water's cooled off, like Dean is saying. Ever since it got cooler, the fishing's gotten a lot better, particularly in the bays, right? I think you can do just about anything you want to. I'd be throwing something that if I were fishing out of the boat, I'd probably be throwing something that imitates a shrimp. If I was fishing. If I was wade fishing, I'd probably be throwing a twitch bait or a paddle tail or something like that. And then if that's not working, throw something that imitates a shrimp. That's what's fun about it. Yeah. But like fishing could be pretty good this weekend.
Dean, what are you seeing down there on the lower coast?
Looks like an amazing week to me, man. Even for the weekend challenged anglers, the weekday challenged anglers.
Are you going to make me bring my boat all the way down there this weekend?
It is all good. I was just looking at the tide. I mean, right now, it's like 1.7, and that is you can drift the shallowest flats. That's a lot of water. But so this week has been interesting. I mean, it's been fun. It's been you're always learning something out there. And this week has been, we have caught, I don't know if I was going to add them up, we've had so many big, just healthy, thick speckled trout and one red all week long. It's been very unusual. But for what I would do this weekend is to treat it like a summertime day. We've caught fish on top waters. We've caught a lot on soft plastic, moving them quick, paddle tails, just rolling them through the grass. Really aggressive fish. The water temperature right now, let's see what it says. Water temperature in Port Aransas is 60 degrees in the channel. So the flats will be a little bit warmer than that. I mean, it's just going to be a great weekend. The only thing we got against us down here is a little chance of rain on Saturday. The wind at the most is like 13, 14 miles an hour, which is really nice drifting, you know. So it's kind of a free-for-all. It's amazingly so this is normally some of our coldest time of the year, and we're way above that right now. So covering a lot of water, throwing top waters, drifting, kayaking in our area should be amazing. You know, the Lighthouse Lakes and BNR, which are normally so shallow you're dragging bottom, are going to have an amazing amount of water back there. And that place, you get away from a lot of the boats. It's tough to navigate in a skiff. So kayakers do very well. We still got duck season going on. There's still a lot of airboats running around. But that's an early morning thing and late evening. So you have all of the midday to yourself out there. All
right. By the way, I got a text message from my guy, Michael Krolik at Knock and Tail, mycoastoutdoors.com. It should be good to go today. If not today, tomorrow. The website has got a brand new makeover. You can purchase your Knock and Tails right there on the website. A lot easier. You got to use that Bite Me 20 code, BITEME20, and brand new. It's going to be a lot easier, a lot better for you to get your Knock and Tail lures. And of course, coastalfishinggear.com has the same special on the Bite Me combo. The Bite Me combo is the wading belt, which we were talking about that. Certainly, that might be my go-to if I'm not dragging my boat down there to Aransas Pass this weekend. Wading belt, the sling, all the good stuff you can get right there. It's a great combo. Bite Me 20, Bite Me 20, get 20% off at coastalfishinggear.com. All right, so it's slowrideguide.com. Dean, what's going on, and can people get a hold of you there the best way?
You can call me, email, messenger on Facebook, shoot me a message through the Bite Me podcast. I get them there. All of those. I'll be at the ranch this weekend. We're going hunting one more time. So I'll be out of pocket for this weekend and maybe one more, and then we'll be back at it full speed again. Got a bass fishing tournament coming up. I'm fishing
a bass tournament?
A buddy of mine, friend of mine that I've known since junior high school. He's a bass master. It's what he lives for. He's coming down here to Coletta Creek. I'm fishing Coletta Creek in January and then Choke Canyon in February with him.
How about that?
So that's going to be
interesting.
Yep, bass fishing tournament. I don't know which series it is, but he follows it around all year, and it was close to my neighborhood, so he invited me to jump on his boat and fish with him a couple days.
So that this time when you say worm, it actually will be a worm.
I was talking to him on the day, and he was like telling me, like, I need this. We tell you sex, we got to punch through some hydrilla, and we got to do this and that. I said, the only thing you need to know about bass fishing is throw the purple worm at a stick.
Yeah.
I hope there's a camera on that boat.
Oh, that would be so good. A bass fisherman that I know always says the same thing. I said, what should I throw? He always says, you can throw anything you want as long as it's purple with a white tail. It's like, all right. Anything you want, as long as that it fits that parameter. And you got a question about the big redfish series coming up. Caleb, you got something going on as well?
Yeah, they were asking if I was fishing the Elite, and I don't think I've ever fished an Elite. The Elite has a cool name and a cool stage, but the Excalibur that the Professional Redfish League puts on, that's the big boy these days. I think that we're running about, I think it's like $86,000 a tournament or something. And it's it's all, everybody's already in it. You already have to be paid up for. I think there's 28 teams, and every one of them are upper echelon teams. That's the new big boy on the coast.
All right, boys. Always a blast here. Thank you for everybody who joined us on the YouTube live feed. We broadcast live to record for the podcast every Tuesday, pretty much about 3:40. We get together at 3:30, line it all up, and we hit go live about 3:40. We do want to remind you to subscribe to the podcast on iTunes or Spotify or Google Podcasts, because that's what we want. That's where you can get the most easy access to the podcast wherever you're going, whether you're driving to the ramp, driving down to the coast, whatever it is you're doing. Dean, appreciate you jumping in. For those who don't know, Dean jumped in on relative short notice here. Scott was having signal problems down at his ranch, so you the man.
Yeah, it's like 2 minutes.
It took like 2 minutes. I'm going to be down in your neck of the woods. You and Carrie won't be there, but we're going to be out there looking at some places, maybe even fishing from the shoreline or figuring something out. I don't think I'm going to bring my boat down. You never know. And Caleb,
unfortunate, I'm going to miss you this weekend, but we'll get together.
I'll be back,
soon, man.
You'll get your fill. You'll be sick of me real quick here.
We'll go over to Mickey's and we'll talk about why Caleb has limited access.
That's what, yeah,
exactly. He's got the restraining
Don't order
order.
the cheese sticks there. Don't do it. It's detrimental to your health. That's a cheese block that's fried.
It's a cheese chunk, man.
Yes.
That makes sticks over there.
So I've got an undercover narc do at my house in 10 minutes to record airways with. So if I kind of disappear,
no, we're done.
Come looking.
We're done. Unless
Always
you have
a pleasure,
something
guys.
that is absolutely important to mention, Caleb.
If I get in a bind, I'm naming names.
Okay.
He's going
all
out
right,
for cheese,
good stuff,
Joe.
boys.
All right, guys, appreciate it, man. Always a pleasure.
We'll talk
being
to you
on the
later.
show.
This is the Bite Me Pad podcast. Appreciate you guys joining us. Catch them up, and we'll catch you next time.
Later.
You don't get to just hang up on this one, Dean. They